Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skill on my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Now, what I'm going to talk about here, I'm just going to give 3 examples, and this could be extended out to 20 examples in YouTube fitness. And my point that I'm going to make here is that guys who have been following, like any of these 3 or a lot of other people, but I can give examples of specifically why these people would be in this situation still, who are following guys like Athlean-X, Kinobody, AlphaDestiny, all of them who've been training at least 6 months and they're still tiny and weak. You know, at that point, if you are and you're still following them, you kind of deserve it. And the reason I say that is that, yeah, a lot of naive people will get taken in by some of the fluff and pump and the weird training ideas and stuff that these guys try to promote and sell. But at a certain point, you've got to realize it's not working. And if you're realizing after 6 months, hey, this isn't working, and there's other people like me out here saying, hey, guys, this is why a lot of their stuff isn't going to work for you. They're just marketing and they're selling you guys programs. And it's not to say they might not understand the basics, but they market to specific niches of people to get you to buy stuff and watch them, and you're not really going to get much in the way of results. Now, what I will say, though, if you happen to follow Athlean-X and you're happy with your results, then by all means carry on. But if you're following most of his advice, you're probably not going to be reaching your potential. So let's kind of cover each of these guys real quick as to why that would be. And at a certain point, guys, I just don't feel sorry for people who aren't getting results. You should know these guys are kind of, you know, not really giving you the real deal at that point. Because you should have made a massive chunk of your new gains by 6 months, right? If you're still deadlifting 300 pounds at 6 months and you're still benching 135 after 6 months in the gym for a few reps, paused reps, there's a problem. There's a problem. And it has nothing to do with the fact that, well, that's the results you want to get. Everyone wants to get to their goals quickly. They want to get to their goals quickly even if they don't want to get particularly big. And if you're not trying to get really big, getting to your goals fairly quickly shouldn't be that hard. And I mean, a perfect example, I mean, if you've been following, say, Athlean-X and you're happy with looking like Jesse in terms of his size, I don't necessarily mean his look, because looks vary. A lot of guys say, well, I don't want to look like you. Well, that's not the point. It's going to take you a long time to get to my size, and then, of course, obviously, you would be probably, a lot of you guys would want to be a lot leaner than me, and that's okay. I get that. I understand that. But, you know, if you're not happy at being 155 pounds at 5'10", you guys see the problem there, and you're not happy with a 300-pound deadlift, this is probably not the guy to follow, because that's what Jeff does. He doesn't seem to be able to get guys big or strong who aren't genetically gifted and already big and strong. Yeah, he can work with pro athletes, but when he's given the average Joe, guy like Jesse, there's been no results. He hasn't gained 20 pounds of muscle, seriously. There's no 20 pounds of muscle added on his frame over someone who doesn't train. 300-pound deadlift, guys, that's stuff you should be hitting within 12 to 15 weeks of your first day in the gym on any basic program. All right, let that sink in. I've seen 35-year-old men reach that number in 3 months of working out on any basic program. So here's the problem with a lot of what Jeff does. He talks about the basics, but he doesn't really implement them, and then he sells programs, and from what I hear, his programs aren't even grounded in the basics. It's all this extra extraneous exercises and fluff and pump, and I get it. He's a physical therapist. You know, here's what I would say. I would say Jeff actually does have good information on that stuff. I mean, perfect example, you could be having an elbow pain or a problem with your bicep tendon that hurts where it inserts into your forearm, and maybe you go to his channel and you find out what's causing it, and you fix it. Right? He actually is pretty decent at some of that stuff. I'll give credit where credit is due. He's got some good information there. He's got some good information on not internally rotating your shoulders. He's got good information telling you should probably be doing your shoulder work standing. Right? There's good reasons for all of that. That stuff he gets totally right. But when it comes to building a base, building strength, putting size on people, his information and even what he puts out isn't particularly good. And when he does talk about the basics, things like the squat, for example, saying, oh yeah, you should be doing squats, he doesn't teach the squat. I don't see any information on programming the squat, right? He doesn't teach you how to get better at it and use it to gain size and strength. He just, oh yeah, you should squat. But then when he does get around to talking about it, he starts throwing in, it's all about accessories. And I'm sorry, guys, accessories have their place. I will agree. Accessory work has their place, but not in your base building. Are we serious? If you are struggling to get past a 275 squat, or you're struggling to get past a 350 deadlift, and you're a healthy male under the age of 50, there's a problem with your basic programming. You're either starving yourself to death, you're not sleeping, or you just simply are not on a good program. Whoever's written your program has not written you a good program at all. Right? Your programming sucks. You don't need an accessory to fix that. You're weak on the basic lifts. You don't have a weak point in it. Everything is weak, and you haven't learned how to get strong. And that's okay. We all start somewhere. But he's not given any of that information, and he knows the majority of his followers are going to be noobs. But, a lot of people who follow him do just want to get lean and ripped, and they're not concerned with putting on any real size or strength, and that's okay. If you just want to have a 150-pound athletic look, there's nothing wrong with what he's teaching. It's just that you could probably reach that same thing with a lot less exercise. But again, he starts talking about certain things like band face pulls and stuff like that, and teaches you how to do those. Those are fantastic. But there's a whole lot of useless fluff in there. A whole lot of useless fluff that isn't going to be particularly effective towards your size or strength goals. And a lot of guys who are following that, you are probably not going to make much progress. If you're going there for your source of information, yeah, he might help you with some injury prevention, but he's more concerned with injury prevention than actually progressing on people. And I've caught that in his overall mentality, because that's what his line of work is. But the simple fact of the matter is, the majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people lifting, just don't need that. It's not going to help them. If anything, it's going to hold them back. Because I can assure you the average person with a little bit of mobility work and stuff can start loading and progressing immediately on all the basic exercises. Yes, there will be exceptions, but the people who are the exception are the minority, not the majority. And I can assure you there's not a million people watching YouTube fitness who are in that category. All right, and so therein lies the problem. And then you start looking at the people who comment, and you realize most of the people following have not even built a base, and they're probably never going to build a base just because of what they're following there. Then we hop over to guys like AlphaDestiny. Guys like AlphaDestiny, no leg training, so you're not going to really get strong. Tons of partials, accommodating resistance, odd exercises. Very bad programming. When he writes programming for people, there's no consistency. He literally does stuff like my deadlift program is to just rotate through different band tensions all the time to get past the law of accommodation. And then he fails to develop the deadlift he says he's going to develop doing it. Yeah, because none of that doesn't work. If you go to his channel, yeah, he incorporates a lot of West Side methods, but he doesn't even train as frequently as West Side. Doesn't really implement their full methods. His programs are based around West Side, but 2 days a week instead of 4. And what people need to understand, West Side, a lot of their protocols are not necessarily particularly great for maximum size or strength for the average lifter. Their stuff is built around equipped lifting. They all use drugs. Louis Simmons is the first to say you cannot train like we train without drugs. You cannot do it. All right, that is a direct quote from Louis Simmons at a lecture that I've heard him say. That's a direct quote. You cannot train the way that we train without drugs. And then you go look at the people who follow his programs, and they're all tiny. If you go look through all the people who comment, all the people who are doing his above the knee rack pulls, all the people who are doing this stuff, yeah, they get caught up in it because, again, he's put on a bit of size, he's built his shoulders up and everything, he's strong on pull-ups and things, and people see this stuff and they think, aha, he must really know what he's doing. But it's like they need to realize he was almost that strong 5 years ago. He was almost as strong as a teenager. Like his bench press hasn't even really increased from following the programming he's done now. People need to look at that. Go back and look at what he was lifting before he did all the programs he's now selling. And he was just as strong 3-4 years ago as a teenager as he is now. On things like the bench press. That is an example. He hasn't actually improved. So his own programming hasn't even increased his bench press. And then people are buying these programs, and then you look and they're floundering. Every single person who's reviewed like his Naturally Enhanced, when you go look at their channels, they are still tiny and weak. These are guys who are at points where most people could reach within 6 months. Most average healthy young man in their 20s could surpass where these guys are in 6 months on a proper program, free programs. And he did. It's a big dog and pony show basically, to where he sells kind of a circus act, sells a circus act when he used to know that the basics worked, used to talk about it, and then tries to sell people something different, and then they're all floundering and they're not getting results, but then they continue to follow the guy. But he also markets to a niche. His guys know that he is what you would call an incel. He's a short incel. Doesn't have self-confidence, probably has never been laid, sells that to guys that say, this is how you do it, I'm just like you, because they get that impression, but see, I've learned how to do these things, but he really hasn't. So then he markets to that really insecure group. They buy into it, develop a cult-like following, and then when they don't really get results, they still claim that they do because, say, their above-the-knee rack pull went up. Maybe they gained a little bit of muscle on their traps, and so therefore all of a sudden they think this is all magical because they've bought into it because of the personality, because they can relate to him. His audience, like the whole incel community, all of that stuff, they relate to this guy. And then they never question the fact that none of the stuff is actually working for them. Because again, the guys who review his program, it's either coaches giving a negative review or guys who see the results and they haven't really gotten any. They haven't achieved what you would expect off of a basic novice program. They're not even there yet. Free programs you can get anywhere. Not just mine, there are others. Strong lift, starting strength, all those produce better results than that. Even old All Pros routine, I remember that one. Stuff's all free. Then we hop over to someone like Kinobody, again, selling guys the Hollywood look. And, you got Kinobody, he's been training for like 8 years. He obviously uses a little bit of that there. And then kind of sells that look. But he also promotes a training style that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, he does some good exercises for upper body. I'll agree, man. Getting strong on overall presses, bench press, incline overhead press, weighted pull-ups, all those things. Yeah, absolutely. That will definitely build your upper body up. He's perfectly right. The problem, though, is that he really promotes the amount of volume and overload even on those lifts tends to be very low because he doesn't have people in the gym very long because he promotes the whole intermittent fasting thing and staying really, really lean year round. So unfortunately, because a lot of people following this stuff might be training fasted and they skip legs more or less. Like, sorry guys, those one-legged pistol squats and stuff, they don't really equal leg training. You're not going to get big legs. And all three of these guys are promoting that stuff. It doesn't work particularly well. You're not going to build a base in your legs with these exercises. You can argue all day long about the merits of one-legged exercises and accessories. You guys know how I feel about that. But you sure as hell will never build a base with them. Well, even Jeff Cavalier said that the other day. Well, the barbell squat, heavy barbell squat should be your base, but you need this stuff too, is what he says. Well, these two other ass clowns, Kinobody and Strap-On, Destiny, they're running around promoting these as primary exercises. They have whole workouts where their only leg work is like one-legged stuff. And then when you do see them do something like, again, Kinobody, he's like a 300-pound squatter after years and years and a 400-pound deadlifter. So minimal lower body development and minimal lower body strength can't perform. The problem is that, though, is that, again, he doesn't have very much actual volume, and a lot of guys are going to find they're going to gain muscle very, very slow just due to lack of workload. His upper body exercise selection is good, but it's like with the amount of just doing, again, the reverse sets he does, the reverse pyramids and things like that, you really need some heavy lower body work to even have gotten complete workouts with the amount of volume he has you doing. It's like you would expect, since he's not having people really squat or deadlift, that they would end up using some of their recovery to train more in their upper body, but it's still really low volume and things overall on those big lifts that he promotes as far as your weekly volume. Because a lot of guys go, well, Jason, don't you promote somewhat low volume? Yeah, but you're hitting everything all the time. Whether you're doing like the way I do my orc mode, people say, well, I mean, you're only doing 3 sets of bench every day, and 4 sets right now. Yeah, that's every day, guys. Do the math. And they're all heavy. There is no, oh, I'm going to do back off work and we'll go real light. There's no light days in there. But even like my novice programs, you better look at the amount of sheer volume of pressing that you're doing every week. It's not just 5 or 6 sets. All right, it's a lot of pressing volume for novices, even though we're using moderately heavy weights, because that's what you really need to stimulate adaptation and growth, particularly for building your base. You don't need to come in and have one pressing day where you do 5 sets of heavy presses and leave, and then don't do pressing again for a week. All right, You probably need to be doing some sort of press 3 days a week as a novice. You need to be squatting 3 days a week as a novice. You guys see where I'm going? And you got guys like him. He's cut out the lower body work. So instead of saying, oh, well, I have this extra recovery we could use to maybe train more of the upper body, he keeps the overall volume and frequency really on the low side. Probably, again, because he knows his guys aren't eating enough to grow because he's trying to keep them lean all the time. And they never really reach that physique that he has. Because number one, it's taken him years and years to build it. I mean, this isn't a guy who's just been training that upper body for 3 years. He's got like 8 or 9 years of serious training in, plus obviously a little tiny bit of enhancement. It's not much, but you can clearly see it there. And then the people follow it, and then they wonder why after a year they're still not jacked. Well, that's why. That's why. It's the actual training programming is a problem. The exercise selection is actually pretty good for the upper body. It's actually pretty good. You're just not training enough, and you're probably not eating enough. And then he wants to sell you programs and charge you for it. And that's the thing. All three of these guys are selling you guys programs that probably aren't particularly effective. So at a certain point, people who are still following this stuff, after 6 months or a year, you're still following these guys and you're tiny and weak still, you kind of deserve it. You should have figured it out by now. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.